What's next for IT? In today's economy, technology touches every aspect of the day-to-day operations of business. There has never been more pressure on IT to deliver for our organizations. So what can we expect over the next decade? We need to think differently about how we approach our work to continue to thrive into the future. This requires all of us to be intentional in how we look at our role going forward. Smart IT is an approach to getting the important things done by transforming the way we think, work, and lead. And now, let's disrupt the status quo, simplify the complex, and reduce risk the smart IT way. Everyone, welcome to another episode of the Smart IT Podcast. Once again, this is your host, William Reed. And today, I'm looking forward to chatting with Nick. Nick, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So, Nick, we got a very interesting history here. I believe we connected online maybe about 6 years ago. I think we were both in the probability management group. Yeah. So I think we both have been through some of Sam Savage's content and some of the materials. And then maybe Doug Hubbard's work potentially.
Absolutely.
So that's the way I connected to you. So the whole cool thing with some of the work they're doing. But more recently, in the last couple of months, I reached out. One of my family friends was looking for a way to break into the IT field. So I reached out to my network, and then I got a response from you. And what was cool about it was very, very helpful for him. So it wasn't just the standard, look at this or look at this. It was very well detailed, very interesting on how to structure some of the training he could do, how to look for particular positions, what he should be looking for. So I really appreciate the help just to kind of start things off.
I did not know that. I'm sure I remember it now, and I have to take my own advice. Right now, I am in between jobs, so I was with a place for 8 years. But I'll have to look at that, and it was heartfelt, I'm sure, and it's exactly the type of responses that warm me up so much. You can just tell when people just take 30 seconds and just write something sincere, it makes all the difference in the world. So it's interesting to see you recall something like that from something I don't even remember doing.
And it's nice because it was a perspective from somebody on the inside of what we do.
Yeah, right.
Right. So obviously in the Smart IT Podcast is everybody in every conceivable role inside of IT, from developers, project managers, cybersecurity specialists, risk analysts, business analysts, the entire spectrum, right?
Right.
And we're kind of like the keepers of this digital infrastructure that, like I love to say, it powers the worldwide global market, right?
Sure.
Economic activity, everything you can imagine, moving goods and services across the planet, day-to-day activities for leisure and pleasure.
Right.
It's all got tech underneath it. And behind that, the men and women in IT serving and doing some great work here. So I always feel good talking about that, and really happy for the Smart IT Podcast and having guests like you on.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I think we spoke beforehand. If you don't believe us, right, just unplug it all and watch how the world doesn't turn so well, right? So IT is the backbone of all that.
Oh, if you want to find out tonight, unplug your router, your home router.
Interesting. Why is that?
Well, if you got grandma or family, kids around, they'll notice something, right? It's like, whoa, what happened? We were watching something.
Oh, right.
And grandma was talking to somebody, and the call just went blank.
Yeah, right.
The content on the TV just went blank. And I went and asked Alexa what was going on, and guess what? Alexa didn't respond. Right. So what's the big deal about unplugging a cable from a router inside of a home, right? It's not a business, right? It's just a home, right? So it's just amazing how ubiquitous this technology is, and the work that we do, it makes a difference.
Right.
Now, it's cool. I wanted to talk to you about, obviously, multiple things. And about our pre-chat before the podcast is interesting. We're talking about one of everyone's favorite topic, right? We can't go anywhere about talking about these two letters, right? These two letters everybody for some reason, they keep harping on. I don't know why. It used to be digital transformation. It used to be big data. Now it's these two letters. So what AI, perhaps, do you have any thoughts about AI? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it so-so? Got any thoughts on that, Nick?
Yeah, and it depends on how long we want to kind of stay on this jam, and if there's some other things we want to talk about. But I've been paying attention to it. So I think my last day with my last company was about a month ago or so, and I kind of knew that, I had to pay attention and get my own compass point about what I thought AI was going to be. So I'm diving head in. I just finished a couple Hello Worlds. I've been, collaborating with a lot of all my data friends, all my modeler friends, ex startup friends, and just trying to get a temperature for it as well. So I've been, diving in and trying to, make my own assessment of where I think that line is between the hype and the real deal. So, but is there anything specific you want me to kind of jam on?
Yeah, I guess I could back up a little bit and find out a basic question is IT ready for AI? Right.
Yeah. The short answer is, of course, it's going to take its forms depending on the lens that you look at it. So are you a DevOps person? Are you cybersecurity? Are you a developer? Are you full stack? Are you data scientists? Are you, who are you? And you're going to have a different opinion about it, but you will have an opinion about it. It's impossible, I believe, to be in IT. Now you could be in project management maybe and just trying to lay it and hope it's a fad and hope you don't have to dive in, and maybe you'll be right.
So if you were walking by the C-suite and they're having a board meeting and you heard somebody say, hey, we just came back from a conference and they were doing something that will revolutionize how we do business in our marketplace. Now, if you would have broken into that meeting, Nick, and started talking about large language models and some other technical jargon, they maybe look at you like crazy, like, what are you talking about? So I know in your career, you had to have the, to be able to translate, right? Technical language, sometimes it's called technobabble, or get in the weeds of some of this engineering scientific matter that business people don't necessarily know. But we do know the business people are hearing about use cases, right? How they can digitally transform, how they can transform their business models. So that's going to have an effect on how CIOs think about their operating models. So talk about a little bit about, what IT operating models might look like to change. And then just, the ability of all of IT really to kind of talk that business language, because they're hearing use cases and what's possible. And on the IT side, we're talking about the nuts and bolts of how to make it work.
So you're saying, what would I say if I had to poke my head in a board meeting? Right. Yeah. I would be fired. My boss would be so nervous, because what would happen is I'd get excited and too comfortable and I would lose them. Right. I think it's the older I get, the harder it's for me to succinctly talk about something I'm excited about. And a lot of the times is because there's too much of that oversimplification, right? Yeah. Especially in very large, complicated environments, the Fortune 500. There's nothing simple about a Fortune 500 supply chain. Yeah. And I almost feel like, and I struggle with this, because if I could get it all boiled down in a 30-second soundbite, right? I'd probably be cracking a beer with Elon Musk by now. Right?
Yes.
I would have figured it out. So, but, in seriousness, I get your gist of, so what is the 30-second soundbite? And I think it depends on, the business. If you're in a technical business, when the word workflow, if you want to translate that to, agile and say, well, it's the value stream. It's how your company makes money. So what problems do you have, great board, that you want to resolve? And then we can go back and see if AI can help improve it. Because the other side of the coin is, don't slap technology, as a fix. And, I feel AI is just a way to improve anything. like literally anything. So if you have data on how you did it in the past, maybe have a team look at using that old data and run it through and see if you can come new insights. If it's a new market, well, you can run smart experiments to see, is that market real? Or does that market align with your pain threshold or your change threshold from your current value streams? Those are some of the things I'd want to get into with the board. But I just find it impossible to do in 30 seconds.
Well, a good thing, with 30 seconds, you can talk about increased revenue, increased profits, increased margins, lower EBITDA. They say, all cool things. And then hit them up with benchmarking. There's no one doing it just yet, but we can start on that and start exploring. So I kind of like the way you're talking about.
Yeah. Like give me a classic sales pitch. Give me your problems.
Yes.
Let me make sure I understand and repeat back the articulated problem from your words, not mine. And then let me get out of the boardroom and come back to see if I can deliver, on some of my promises. That's how I would really prefer to talk to the super elite, the super smart. Like, they don't want to be sold, right? And I learned this actually at working at CombineNet, which was a Carnegie Mellon startup. The average spend was $80 million. It was for Fortune 100 companies. My role was to take the data, clean it, scrub it, work with the rest of the delivery team, get custom code out the door, collect new data, bids in the market, and then go train the buyers how to spend $200 million. That's what I did. What I learned there about the no nonsense way, when you're talking with stakes that high, everything's very direct questions, direct answers. What I didn't do so well is after that experience is a lot of that communication style was too direct. You could just tell, like, you had to find a way to soften some of the messages. So that was interesting. Like, when the spend is high and the risk is high, I feel it's direct conversation. When it isn't, there's this odd way to soften everything, right? You can't be so direct. And I struggle with the middle ground at times.
See me just coming in and saying, I don't know, we don't know, but if it's worth it, we can go find out.
Right.
And by the way,
the stakes high enough, right? Yeah. Then we're going to go find out, right?
And by the way, our top 5 competitors, they're still trying to figure out as well to kind of ease that tension. Like, oh my God, we could fall behind, right? Because that's what it is, right? Business people heard something, saw somebody do something weird, and say, we got to be the next Amazon or the next Netflix.
I don't know. I mean, I think logically that makes sense. That's a classic FUD argument, right? Fear, uncertainty, and doubt. But I just feel like the senior decision makers have kind of heard it all before, right? So I struggle with, do you play upon that, that psychology, or do you just try to meet them where they are, right? And meeting them where they are could just be, let me just ask you simply, what are the 2 things you're struggling with right now? That's it. Not the 50. I don't want to make them up. But if you can't connect, right? If you can't connect personally with a decision maker like that, maybe it's just me, but I don't want to waste my time. Right? I don't want to waste my time on a book report project where no one really cares about it. Right? Yeah. Like, and that's the trick.
Yeah, it's almost like finding where people have had success, right? Like if you're struggling with cost of a customer acquisition cost.
Right.
And you're looking around the industry and like, oh man, some other folks are doing it. How do they do it, right? Did they change their business processes? Do they bring in more talent? Do they do both and enhance it with new technology, new emerging tech? And then figure out a way, then it's like, oh, that's interesting. Okay, no one's done it yet. Or no, someone has done it. How are they doing it? How far are we all from doing that? And that's kind of an interesting thing for CIOs, right? They're looking to figure out, okay, do we have gaps in capabilities that we're going to need to help answer those questions for customer acquisition cost, or reducing the amount of time to get some new innovative thing out there? Can I reduce it by a quarter or 2 quarters? Everybody got that pressure of market looking at me. Maybe we're going to go public. Maybe we're going to acquire. So all this pressure is coming from the business, a lot of ideas. And they're looking at the CIO and CTOs, and they're looking at their teams and like, how far off are we? More data scientists?
Yeah.
More data?
And
what are your thoughts?
I would probably ask them, and tell me what you have no appetite for, right? Maybe this is the third run of them trying the next shiny thing. And I would rather go and say, before I go away, I can do both, right? I could come in and do my equivalent of, one of the main trusted public reports, the paid services that the big companies use, and then just regurgitate whatever they could get from their own report and say, oh, we need to use X to solve the Y problem. Yeah. Or I could go one step further and say, and what are you not interested in? Like, what do you have no appetite for? And maybe that's what I can engage with them, and they'll be like, no, I really do want to see where the upper bound is on AI relative to automation or relative to, and there I feel like I got them, right? In the sense that I got a bond. I would personally want to have them engage with me. So I feel I'm not just feeding them some stock report that they could probably go buy from any consulting company. Right.
And that brings up an interesting point about CIOs really having to know their teams, right? What their current capabilities are, their current operating models. Are the other companies doing a different model differently? Are they onshoring or offshoring too much development work? How are they doing their security? How are they managing their projects? Do we need to bring it back in-house? How are these teams actually formed and work with other parts of the business? So the kind of like the next level of a CIO is more like, okay, I'm thinking, I heard what, as I walked by. So instead of Nick, you going into the boardroom, you just put your ear up to the door, you listen for 5-10 minutes, like, okay, and you kept on walking. Then you went back and did all hands calls with your technical leadership. It's like, you know what? This is what I'm hearing.
That's it.
The final what else is possible.
99% be like, Nick, that's what you do.
There we go. And they say, hey, Nick.
Listen, come back.
Yeah. And then we hear the guys, hey, Nick, man, we need like 2 more data scientists. I need some more developers.
Did they mention AI? Yes, they did.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's how it should work.
And then the CISO pipes up and say, hey, Nick, slow your roll down, dude.
Yeah,
we're not mature enough to get our hand on everything. We're going to have some problems, security. So, so talk about that, hearing these different voices, like what's needed, what's possible, where you currently at, and kind of figure out where the gaps, putting together a plan and like, okay, let's get going here so we can come back as a one voice back to the business and say, we've been thinking about some things.
I think you nailed it. And I think that's the game. The game is what size business are you in? And it's an older book. And I think the book that nailed this was The Phoenix Project by Gene Kim, right? Loved it.
Like, absolutely must read for everybody.
It's a game within the game. Like you can have all the logic you want. You can have, everything on surface, but things just aren't working. Well, why not? Well, it's because exactly what you just said. Like, hold up. You can do this analysis, but the conclusions that people are going to draw, what kind of impact is that going to have to the CFO? What's that going to say? Like, how is the chief of security going to respond to the fact that I went and did all these security scans and now I gave you 3 years worth of work with no ROI? Just pain.
Yes.
Right.
So all of a sudden you're up, Bubba, your TCO just went out and your ROI just went down with all these extra work. Yeah. So,
that's the art and science of it all. And again, my hope is that, leadership and culture doesn't shoot the messenger. And that's the wild card. Because there's so much good that you can do. There's so many efficiencies. There's so many like Lego pieces. IT is just one big Lego box to me. Can you get all the master builders in a room solving problems?
Yeah.
So they don't have to think about, oh, I said this too firmly to this person, or my deck didn't have enough Kellers to that person. Like let your problem solvers unlock them. They want to solve the problem, and then try not to be too worried about all that other fluff. And it's not, right. It's like, it's a maturity thing. I get it. It's a skill thing. It's communication. I get it. But don't you have enough of those people already? Mm-hmm. What you don't have is that culture that just wants to wake up and solve problems together as a team. Like, that's the all-star team. That's what everyone wants. And I feel like all this other stuff we're kind of talking about it's a dampening factor to why most companies don't get it.
Well, you bring up a good point there, because we can talk about IT operating models and see how we got this nice, smooth, working well, oil machine. Everybody's working together. Silos been broken down. But it's operating model for the business itself.
Yes.
It's like you said. So if you get in there and you're ready to work and solve problems, and you got three main lines of businesses conflicting, right? And maybe the culture hasn't been built from the CEO down. So the CIO can get caught in the crossfires.
Oh yeah. That's the class. I mean, I feel like that's really what it does come down to the people side of it. And that's what I think is great about tech. And you mentioned before about the translator, right? You got to have that bond. You got to have a personal connection where both sides that you're translating for, like, actually want to solve the problem. And if they don't, that's the big frustration. I mean, anything, digital transformations, agile transformations, you name it, those things all will fall flat. If you don't have, people working together to solve the problem.
The other interesting thing is, it was perfect. That's good. Because the other thing is, people say, well, we can just use data, do some analysis, and that'll solve all the problems, right? So we got three lines of businesses. We don't have to say, I think this is my way is the best way. We can just analyze it, right? But we know there are a lot of uncertainty, right? And the models people use for decision making. Yeah.
I thought that was the ticket, that if I just lay the cards on the table, let them read it themselves, then everyone would be aligned. So, data is too broad of a word. Everyone has, this is a Sam Savageism, right? PTSD. Now I'm drawing a blank. It's this, basically the statistical fear that they got in their like high school class, right? He repurposed it. S is statistical, and I forget the rest of it. But you start flashing too much data and too much fanciness, especially the business elite. They don't want to feel intimidated by a data scientist, right? You gotta round foul off all those sharp edges and be like, and this is what it means. This is the impact. But even that, the data sometimes is so varied.
Yeah.
So even if you want to say uncertainty, if you say, oh no, we can handle that too. We're just going to put variances around some of your best estimates. Nope, not when they are expecting a number with a decimal place, by the way.
Yeah.
I want to know it's going to take us 11.7 days to deliver X, right? Yeah. And we're like, yeah, it's just not in the data. Like, I'll tell you 11.7, but we know that there's no confidence interval.
Not at all. The upper bound could be quite much higher.
Right. So now where are you? So it just, I wish there was a silver bullet, right? And it comes down to those bonds and that trust and like the fundamentals, and then you layer on top the sophistication, whether it's the data analysis side, whether it's, whatever systems that we don't have today or techniques. But again, that's where I think AI is a fun sandbox for people to, I don't know, I'll say buffer, but you can experiment with it and be like, well, the AI is wrong. It's not the CIO is not wrong, right? It's, oh yeah, we don't like the, okay, fine. I think AI is a beacon for people to kind of get unstuck from some of these things that I'm kind of bringing up, the soft politics of it all.
Well, I love it because it's been democratized, right? So at first with AI in earlier days, it was like only for the people, for data scientists, right?
Right.
But now all of a sudden, OpenAI comes out here. It's like, whoa, anybody can just sign up for a free account and start using it. So just basically opened everything up, right? Just exploded now. So not limited to a certain number of people who went through a lot of schooling, a lot of training. It's like somebody can ask a question for a forecast or utilizing a lot of other information that's been sitting there. And all of a sudden, it's like, now we have to go catch up now, right? So once you get into the end user's hands of thinking about what potentially could be used to help our work, speed up our operations, increase efficiency. Now all of a sudden, you got a CIO and his team got to come back and say, you know what? Whoa, let me make sure and find out what we can do and get on top of this.
Yeah. And I mean, to try to put, we'll say, some specificity around the AI and use cases. I think that when AI came out 30, 20 years ago, you'll hear these generational, claims that I remember when AI was X and Y. And you could say the same thing about optimization. So if we can get a little bit deep here, right? The startup that I worked for used an algorithm that was 50 years old, right? It came out of operations research, essentially wartime planning. But it's sad, right? It's sad, or there was not a market opportunity to really make it, valuable in a specific business use case. So the startup got founded by some casual conversations, and it landed on strategic sourcing, or more of a supply chain application, right? So it was a classic maximize good, minimize bad.
Yeah.
That was it. Linear programming. It was. So I think the same thing with AI, in that we were using Google search for 15 plus years, and it did exactly what you just said with AI. It had anyone could you type in a bar and hit enter? Congratulations. Yeah. You're now using Google search that's searching the entire internet, all the knowledge in the world. You want to see what that purple flower is? Can you type and hit enter? Congratulations. You're using search, right? So it's the same thing with AI right now. It's that same use case. Unfortunately, that use case is already dated, because what's happening with AI today, so we got introduced to ChatGPT through that 15 plus year use case we knew through search.
Yeah.
Okay. But now that door is busted wide open. This goes back to the CIO, why I would encourage anyone listening to, there's intelligent ways to experiment with AI without exposing your own data. Number one, I'll say.
Yes.
Number two, find the curious people in your organization and make it fun. Have a lunch, do a weekend thing. I don't know, but you'll be able to generate 1,000 ideas and safely explore AI. Okay. Happy to talk to anyone about that. But that linear motion of I go in, I prompt, I get something back is not even what AI is anymore. It's going to be a layer on top. It's to say, oh, here's some data. I'm going to create 2 or 3 personas. I'm going to create a persona of a CIO, of a CISO, of a QA analyst, of a marketing analyst. I'm going to create these personas, and I'm going to build up the next layer of AI use cases to see if we should be exploring the following markets. That's what's happening right now. And it's almost just as easy to set that up as it is that initial use case. Because all you need to really do is describe the personas. You get a little bit of a junior level developer to put the code into the model, and then you hit the go button and you watch what comes back. So most people who I talked to in the last 3 or 4 weeks, I'm like, hey, have you heard about this agent to agent interface on the AI models. Not only that, there's outfits out there that are using 7 or 5 of the models concurrently. Like, so you don't even have to be beholden to one LLM.
Yeah.
So that just dropped 6 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So when you say AI, and you say, what should we say to the board? Well, you really need a team of people staying on top of it without feeling like you're betting the farm with every new release with AI. And it's this next level use case of agents to agents, AIs talking to AIs, focused through some specific business use cases and business objectives. That's what's happening right now. And that's going to be the way organizations are going to address their most complicated problems, as a tool supporting them. Not, hey, Nick, go back 6 weeks, buy some reports online, come back, give me a pretty PowerPoint and sell it.
Yeah.
Right. That's the old model. And I think that's going to serve some people right and well. Like, they're going to want that. They're going to want to be told, like the classic, like, no one got fired for hiring one of the big consulting companies. Yeah. Okay. Maybe, unless your market goes away.
Yeah. Yes, I know.
Right? We all get fired then.
Yes. What's innovative, because interesting, you almost could ask it, hey, what we're not talking about? Take a look at all our notes and all our meeting notes from across the organization. What have we not talked about, discussed, or even contemplated? Can't
do it. You can't do it in the old way. And that's, there's just too much information. And even if the AI comes back and, we talk about probability and risk, even if it comes back with 50% garbage, you can still find ways to tease out, the signal from the noise, because there could be in the 2%, 1 or 2 gems in there. So it's not a binary thing, right? It's not an either or. If you're a little bit creative with the way you tease out the garbage and the hallucination, right? Because the hallucination is just a huge non-starter for people who aren't close to AI or tech, right? But even the hallucination stuff is getting looked at really creatively. So I just, with a little creativity, you really can't lose by getting a team in place that knows how to kind of navigate the AI space.
So Nick, I have a little provocative question. Now, some people over rely on technology too much, and they're going to get so wrapped up in AI. It's going to be that point when they say this company just went out of business because they went on a very, very aggressive new strategy that led them to collapse. And the CEO can get up in front of the press conference and say, it wasn't our fault. Nick, IT built this AI system that recommended a course of action that led to the downfall of our company. It wasn't the human's fault, so don't blame me. Can you see that happening?
Yeah. I think it goes back to the premise we talked about earlier. What is IT? What is software programming? What was software programming 15 years ago? I remember great programmers almost breaking out into a cold sweat rash when you started talking about the hardcore algorithms that the software needed to ingest, with the API call and then throw back data and a report. And if you ask them to start to debug the algorithm itself, they're like, no, I'm not, that's not me. That's a math quant type. And fast forward now, how many people can fire up R or something and call a library and say, here's my data, fit this data to, and by the way, don't use one algorithm, use 8 of them. And any programmer now can do that. Yeah. So I think it's the same thing with AI in your use case, which is to say, one, does the business understand its own separation from church and state, from its business model and IT, number one? and then do you have some people around you that can talk about where this AI line in the sand is drawn from what you maybe been doing anyways that you guys called machine learning or even regression? Like, how are you guys using whatever it is you're using to make, quote, good business decisions? Odds are you're using like a whole, say, genealogy of sophistication, which could have probably been arguably using AI before it was even called AI.
Yep, very true.
So, like, I feel those situations that you're describing, they're gonna get the weak businesses, right? They're gonna get the weak leaders. They're gonna get the lazy businesses that are covering their eyes, hoping the AI monster goes away and doesn't touch their cash cows and their value streams, right? But I think for most people paying attention, most leaders, most boards, most organizations that are always weary of we can't rest on our laurels, they're probably not going to get caught in a situation like what you're describing.
That's good.
Unless they choose it, right?
Yeah.
Here's the problem now is if you get the greedy business people, and they're only worried about making money, they're going to look at this and they're going to weaponize it. They're going to weaponize it to cut costs someplace, fire a bunch of people, and then what? Right? So, and that's a valid concern, but I feel like AI in some ways is going to ask us in a broader way to even rethink some of our definitions of what a good company is.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, just because you can fire half your workforce doesn't necessarily mean you should. Right? I mean, you could probably retrain them and go find a more lucrative market or do something else, or, fire a subset of that. And that's what I think is really interesting with this AI debate. I think it's going to be really revealing. I think I call AI as a mirror. It's a mirror. It's being held up to our society right now.
Yeah.
And we're going to sit there and do exactly what you said. We're going to blame the AI, right? Or is it how you chose to use the tool, right? That was your choice, not the AI's choice, until we get AGI, but that's probably a different podcast.
There you go. So in the beginning, the middle, and the end, it always comes back to us, the humans. Always.
I hope. I mean, I'm as not, one great leader would say, I won't say their name, but I'm pro-human.
Yes. Right? We're kind of cool, right? Humans are kind of cool.
I mean, I kind of like hanging out with humans.
Me too.
Right.
Hey, Nick, we could probably go on for hours on this, man. I definitely appreciate your time today to kind of talk about some of these topics and get some insights from you. And it was kind of cool. Our pre-talk, we kind of led into a little AI things. There's so many other topics we could talk about it. So we'll have to come back, have you back on the future for some part 2.
And I feel like I stayed in the general a lot. But if we wanted to really go down some specific use cases, and even the word AI basically makes some people, their skin crawl a little bit because they're like, what do you mean specifically? Right? AI is such a broad topic. But yeah, I'd love to. And thank you for this opportunity. And this is really fun to do. So thank you so much.
Hey, thank you for your time today. Everybody, that's been another episode of the Smart IT Podcast. If you want more information, you can go to williamreed.info. Until the next episode, take care. Thanks for joining another episode of the Smart IT Podcast, where we explore what's next for IT and disrupt the status quo, simplify the complex, and reduce risk together. If you like what you hear, please like, subscribe, and leave your comments. And for more Smart IT wisdom, check out my website at williamreed.info.